All right, Shabbos, say good. Okay. Good morning, everyone. A great schos Baruch Hashem to be able to be back with all of you. A very special thank you to Rabbi Richter, to Rabbi Kalman Akiva for giving the shir while I was gone. But Baruch Hashem, a wonderful schos to be able to begin the new week together. Begin by thanking all of our sponsors. So thank our TALMUD Torah sponsors for the month of Menachim Av, the Tilson and Wohl families from Eretz YIsrael, for dedicating all of the shiurim and droshos this month with love from Eretz YIsrael and inviting us, Emir Hashem, to come and join them. We should be Zocha Emir Hashem b'sha'a tova u'mitzlachos. Our week of learning sponsors, Leah Sol, wishing a Mazel Tov to Avraham and Zeesy Silber on the birth of their son. Mazel Tov, Emir Hashem. Parents should be Zocha to be able to be Magadol, little Shaya Silber, Emir Hashem, l'Torah, l'chopel, l'maisim tovim, ameh v'esim shanim tovos. And Leah Sol wishing a Mazel Tov to Robyn Schaffer and Chet Wyman on their marriage yesterday. Baruch Hashem, a beautiful chasana. We wish the chassan and kala much mazel, much bracha, and much simcha, ameh v'esim shanim tovos. And we'll say, of course, we dedicate our learning this morning with an incredibly heavy heart in the Ilui Nishmos, the 6 hostages who were murdered just a short time before their rescue. Hirsch Goldberg, Aiden Yerushalmi, Alex Labanov, Carmel Gat, Ori Danino, and Almog Sarusi. It's you see a little bit, and we have to. I want to get to Agimar because I don't want to. But you see one of the most incredible things when you look at the plight of Am Yisrael is the impossible situation that we are often put in. Impossible. It's not just that we're murdered and butchered on October 7th, and it's not just that Jews, men, women, and children are taken hostage. But the impossible situations that we're put in, right? You see now the strikes, the massive strikes that are happening, the massive protests, right? So, and you understand that people want a hostage deal. But on the other hand, we also see that it absolutely, unequivocally emboldens our enemies. It absolutely does when they see the fracture within our people and they see the friction within our people, and they see that like the Rachmanas of the Jew is, just give us back our loved ones. Enough. Just give us back our brothers, our sisters, our children. So it's like we get into this impossible situation where if we want our people back, we probably have to sacrifice safety and security. And if we want safety and security, then we can't have our brothers and sisters back. What other people in the world is ever put in this type of situation? What other people in the world? Do you understand the enormity of this? That these precious neshamas, they were alive on Erev Shabbos. They were alive on Thursday. They were alive. They were alive. Our tfilos and our avoda to keep our hostages alive, it worked in such a beautiful. And then literally again, just moments, the achzorius, the sheer cruelty of their captors is absolutely, could have just as easily said, just go. Could have just let them roam free in the tunnels. What we're living through are times of not just adversity, but the most inhumane and the darkest type of human behavior that the world has seen probably since the times of the Holocaust. And all of it always inflicted upon our people. I don't pretend to know what this is. The choices that our leaders in Eretz YIsrael have to make are the most overwhelming of choices. There's no, it's easy to say, just bring them home at any cost. And of course, that's what the heart says. What do we have to give up? Again, the decisions are overwhelming. And it's easy for us to weigh in and to opine and to give our opinions on what should be done and what shouldn't be done. But I think for us, especially 6,000 miles away, our avoda is to keep on doing whatever we can within our spiritual grasp. To keep on learning a little bit more, to keep on davening a little bit harder, to give more tzedakah, to do more chesed, to do whatever we can. Because the ray of hope that we had is that these precious neshamas were still alive. they were still alive. You've heard people say, there's no way the hostages are alive. And anytime a person says that, I cringe at that, because the power of the Jew is to never give up hope. The power of the Jew is to always keep the fires of optimism burning. And we see they were alive. They were alive just literally moments up until the rescue, moments up until our precious soldiers got there, which tells us that our avoda has the ability to do something. Our avoda has the ability to do something. And especially as we go into Chodesh Elul. And we go into Chodesh Elul with such a broken heart. The levayas that are happening today. The levaya for Hirsch Poland is happening at 9 o'clock our time today. And the levayas that are going to be happening, and you see the pictures that are coming, out from the first day of school. And again, soldiers who have fallen in battle have their commanding officers taking their children. It's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. But what it tells us is it's time to redouble our efforts. It's time. I know it's Labor Day, and Baruch Hashem, we have a little bit of extra time in our hands today. Hopefully, use it. Okay, yes, relax and enjoy and spend time with your family. Absolutely, but also add in a little extra avoda. And Chodesh Elul is coming. We have to make this an Elul. We have to make this an epic Elul, because Klal Yisrael needs an epic Elul. Because Klal Yisrael needs a Yeshua, because Klal Yisrael needs a salvation, because Klal Yisrael needs us. The Ribbon Shalom should give an aliyah to the neshamas of these precious souls, an aliyah to the neshamas of these precious Jews. What they endured, what they suffered in captivity, only they and HaKadosh Baruch Hu know. But there is no doubt that they suffered, but no doubt that they exhibited incredible strength, Herculean strength, to be able to endure whatever their tormentors heaped upon them. And that should serve as a source of inspiration for us. Klal Yisrael, we could survive anything, and we do survive anything. Like we always speak about, the outcome is not in doubt. The outcome is that Klal Yisrael always emerges victorious. The only question is, what will be the cost of that victory? And how much pain will line the path of that victory? But it is incumbent upon us to daven for the neshamas, to daven for their families, to daven for Klal Yisrael, to continue to daven for the remaining hostages. We cannot give up hope. We cannot fall into the grasps of Yeush. We have to believe that some way, somehow, our remaining brothers and sisters will come home and will come back to their families. By whatever means we have to take, whatever means necessary, keep the fire of hope, the fire of optimism burning. Do our avoda, continue to act in halavai natzuchos. Our hostages will come home. Our soldiers will be successful. The neshamas of those who we have lost. Sheva litra gan eden. Shevei melitz yosher for all of Klal Yisrael and halavai. We should be zocher that before this year comes to a close, we should be zocher Eretz Hashem to be able to usher in the Geula and to be able to usher in to welcome in Mashiach Mihira B'Yameinu. Amen. Also, today's daf is Samech Tes 69. We are picking up Eretz Hashem at the Mishnah on Samech Tes on the days, a brand new sugya for us. So again, a really fascinating and incredible sugya. So again, continuing in the theme of when you sell something, what is included in that sale? What is included in the sale? So the Mishnah says as follows. So we'll say, we're going to go through the Mishnah now. Now the Mishnah uses some pretty nondescript terms. We'll define ultimately again what everything means in the Gemara. If a person sells a field, so they included in the sale are the stones that are necessary for the field. What that means, we'll see in the Gemara. So if you're buying a vineyard, you go ahead and you also include in the sale are the reeds necessary for the vineyard. If you buy a field, this is a wheat field. If you buy a field, you purchase, included in the sale, is any wheat that ultimately, again, is attached to the ground. Or a thicket of reeds that is less than a quarter of a kav. Okay? And if you have a guard booth, if the guard booth is not made of mortar, it's included in the sale as well. Or if you have a carob tree that is not grafted. Or you have a sycamore tree that has never been pruned. So let's say, so all of these are things that if you buy a field, they're all automatically included in the sale of the field. But if there are stones in the field that are not necessary for the field, they're not included in the sale. Nor, if you're buying a vineyard, are the reeds that are not necessary for the vineyard included. Again, we'll see in all of the scenes in the Gemara. Or if you have harvested wheat. This is actually very interesting. If I'm buying a wheat field, and the wheat has been harvested, and remember again, it is lying in the field, that wheat is not included in the sale. So obviously, the exception to this rule is, if I buy a field from Reuven, and Reuven sells to me, and he sells to me in a way, and he says, the field and everything that is in it, so now obviously that's a different type of sale. Right? That's an all-inclusive sale, and then that will include everything that is in the field. Benkach u benkach, but I want to listen to this. Even if you make the statement, I'm selling you the field and everything that is in it, there are still certain things that are excluded. If there is a thicket of reeds that is at least a quarter of a kav that is never included in the sale, because that's considered to be almost like an entity unto its own. Or if you have a guardhouse that's made of mortar, because a guardhouse that is made of mortar is more substantive and is considered to be an entity unto its own. Nor does it include a grafted carob tree, because you can both say these items were considered to be more significant and therefore never included in a sale, or a pruned sycamore tree. So these items again are considered to be more significant, and therefore I will say, here's what's going on over here, right? Essentially, there are really three iterations of sales. So there's one sale they'll call a stam sale. So a stam sale is, I sell a field to Reuven. What's included in the field, or what's included in the sale? So the Mishnah goes through that. Items that are normally, again, just a part of the field. What's not included in the field? Things that are not necessarily necessary for the actual usage of the field. But however, if I sell the field and I say everything that's in it, so that's an all-in sale. But even in an all-in sale, there are certain things that are so chashuv that they are reckoned as an independent entity and therefore not included in the sale. Included in that are a guardhouse that is plastered, that is made of mortar, that's right, a grafted carob tree, and a pruned sycamore tree. Or for that matter, a thicket of reeds that is at least a quarter of a kav. These things are considered to be so chashuv that they are never included in the sale of a field. Okay, incredible. Let's go. Gemara 69a Samach Tesam Dalef. My avonim she'en tzarcha. So I'll say. So first thing we spoke about is I'm selling a field to Reuven. The Mishnah said included in that sale are stones necessary for the field. What are stones necessary for the field? Hacha targimu avnei da'achba. So I'll say avnei da'achba. Rashbam points out is, after you go ahead and you harvest wheat or harvest grain of any sort, you leave it in the field to dry out. Now, obviously, you don't want the grain to scatter. So what do? You put a rock or rocks on top, or stones on top of that sheaf. Those are called avanim shein netzarchol. That's called the avnei da'achba, rocks that you put on top of sheaves in order that they don't scatter. So therefore, again, if I'm selling a field to Reuven, included in the sale of the field are those rocks. Okay, that's the Rabbana. Ula says, avanim hasturos lagadar. Ula says, no, it actually refers to stones that are ultimately, again, organized. Sturos means they're organized in a field in order to go and erect the wall. So in this case, Rabbi says, so remember, the wall doesn't yet exist, but the stones have been laid out, right? They've been laid out, they've been organized in order to go ahead and erect the wall. So Ula says those stones would be included in the sale of the field. So Rabbi Chia's lashon was avanim tziburos. Tziburos means what? Literally piled. It's not just enough to have them sturos. So sturos ultimately again means they're organized. They're there. They're in other words, like you see this by building partners, like the pallet, right? The pallet of stones has been delivered to the field. Again, they haven't been organized. You're not piled. Rabbi Chia says piled, to which the Gemara says, no, tani sturos. Ultimately, change it to sturos. So in other words, if you have stones in a field, and the stones are there, obviously, again, organized in the field, and it's clear that they're going to be used to erect the wall, so ultimately, again, those stones are included in the sale. So the Gemara says, now going back for just a moment. So now we have two different opinions as to what does it mean when we say that if you sell a field, the stones necessary for the field are included in that field. So again, first opinion, avnei da'achba, it refers to the stones that are normally placed on tops of the sheaves of wheat to keep them from dispersing. And opinion number two, it's stones that are organized inside the field that are going to be used to build a wall. Okay, so the Gemara says, hacha targimu avnei da'achba. So we'll say, so now the Gemara says over here, so here we take the approach of avnei da'achba. Avnei da'achba means the stones placed on top of the sheaves that they shouldn't scatter. Now remember again, the Gemara now references another machlokes that we had before between Rabbi Meir and the Rabbanon. Take a look at the Rashbam for just a moment. It's the second short line, Rabbi Meir. Suppose remember again, we had this machlokes. We referenced it before, but we'll see it again in Eretz Hashem. So I'll say, so this machlokes Rabbi Meir and the Rabbanon, that when you sell something, so what is included? What is included ultimately again in that sale? So Rabbi Meir has a very expansive view. Rabbi Meir essentially says anything that is in any way used as part of the service of the field is included. The Rabbanan, in general, have a much more restrictive view. They really hold that anything that is only like part of the permanent usage of the field is included. Rabbi Meir says anything that is part of the permanent usage and ongoing usage, general usage, is included. So now the Gemara says like this. Rabbi Meir, so the Gemara wants to apply this machlokes over here. The Gemara says, Rabbi Meir, the miskan, afagav machtan. According to Rabbi Meir, the stones would be included. The stones would be included in the sale of the field, as long as what? As long as they have been prepared for the use for putting them on top of the sheaves, even if they have not yet actually been delivered to the field. So this is very interesting. So I'm selling a field to Ruvain. Right? It's a wheat field. So now the Mishnah says, included in the sale of the field are the stones necessary for the field. We've established now what are the stones necessary for the field. Machlokes, either the stones you put on the sheaves or the stones that you're going to use to erect a wall. So now let's go with the first idea, that it's the stone for the sheaves. According to Rabbi Meir holds that halacha l'maisa, as soon as those stones have been identified, right, or have been set aside, even if they're not in the field itself, they're included in the sale. The Rabbanon hu demachton. According to the Rabbanon, they're only included if what? If they've actually been placed in the field itself. But according to Ulu, who says that the stones the Mishnah references are the stones that are going to be used to erect the wall, Rabbi Meir de miskan afal gav de lo sidron. According to Rabbi Meir, as long as they are in the field, right? As long as they've been set aside, even if they have not been organized, they're included in the sale. The Rabbanon hu desidron. The Rabbanon ultimately again require that halacha l'maisa they have to be arranged in order for them to be included in the sale. Fine. So that's part one. Part two. Next, what else is included in the sale of a field? Well, this is actually for a vineyard, the vines. The vines, I should say the reeds, excuse me. So reeds necessary for the vineyard are also included in the sale. So the Gemara says, Kanim ma'avidatayu. What exactly do you need reeds for in a vineyard? So Amr Dibei Rabbi Yanai, Kanim hamichulakim, shema'amidin tachas hagifanim. So we'll say this is very interesting. So you would use smoothed reeds, right? They would smooth out the reeds, like shave off, like cut off the, smooth is, what? Peeled or smooth, peeled reeds. And I will say what you would do is actually interesting. You don't want the vines to drag on the ground because that's going to impact the grapes. So how do you prop up the vines? With these reeds. So you would take these straightened reeds, these peeled or these shaved reeds, and you would put them under the vine to keep the vine off the ground. So therefore, if I'm selling Ruvain a vineyard, included in the sale of the vineyard are the vines. Are the reeds. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Meir, the Meshafion afagav de lo mukman. So according to Rabbi Meir, as long as they've been peeled, even if they have not yet been put under the vine, they're included in the sale. Because remember, Rabbi Meir has a much more expansive view as to what is included in the sale. The Rabbanan hu demukman. According to the Rabbanan, ultimately, again, you would need them actually placed in the vineyard in order to be able to be included in the sale. Okay. So remember again, so the Mishnah said that if I sell, now in this case I'm selling a wheat field. So if I sell a wheat field to Reuven, included in the sale is any wheat that is any grain that is attached to the ground. To which the Gemara says, now it seems to be pretty posh. Va'afagav dematay lemechtzad. So now what's the chiddush in that? The chiddush in that is, even though again the wheat technically is ready to be harvested. So I might have thought that since the wheat is ready to be harvested, therefore what? It's as if it's harvested. We have this concept, right? That anything that is raw, that is fit for something, it's as if the process has already occurred. That's the paradigmatic example that is kol haroy lebila, ein bila ma'akeves, by carbon mincha, whatever carbon mincha could be mixed. As long as it can be mixed, even if it's not mixed, it's okay. Or by wool, kol haroy ligzos ki gazos dami. So I might have thought that Allah l'maisa, because the wheat is ready to be harvested, it's as if it is harvested, and therefore it's not included in the sale. Kamash malan, if it's attached to the ground, it's still included in the sale. Okay. The eschitzas hakalim shepechusim beis rova. So says, so too, if I have a patch of reeds that is less than a quarter of a kav, it is included in the sale as well. Va'afagav da'alimi, right? And even though, again, ultimately, the Rashbam says over here, afagav da'alimi, the Basra tfisas akarkas linon precious. Even though again, it's a robust patch, but because it's so small, therefore Allah said is included in the sale. So too, what else is included in the sale? The guardhouse that is not made of mortar. Afagav delo kavia bakarka. So we'll say, so the chiddush over here is, even though it's not attached to the ground, because remember again, apparently there are two different ways to make a guardhouse. You could just make it really, I guess, like a semi-impermanent structure, in which case it's not attached to the ground, or you can make it mortar, in which case again it's more substantive. So the idea over here is, if it's not made of mortar, even though it's not attached to the ground, it's still considered to be part of the field, and therefore included in the sale. That's first wide line of both. So we'll say saloch l'maisa again. So too, if you have a carob tree that is not grafted, or a sycamore tree that has not been pruned. So we'll say, so a little arbitorial knowledge over here. So apparently, again, you would only graft a carob tree when it matured. Which also, by the way, which is quite fascinating, right? If you think about this, there's a lot. The pasuk says, "Ki adam eitz hasoda." Man is like the tree of the field. There's a lot to be learned about human nature from the trees, right? You only go ahead and you only graft the carob tree once it matures. We'll say, what does grafting represent? So grafting represents introducing something new into the tree. Let's say it's a tremendous yisod in chinuch. How careful we have to be about what we allow our children to be exposed to. Because again, sometimes parents think that whatever, the influences around, they're not going to impact their children. It's not true. The job of a parent, especially in today's day and age, is to try to shelter and cocoon your children as much as you can for as long as you can. This krum ideology that, since my kids are going to be exposed to stuff anyway in the future, I might as well just expose them now. It's like saying, well, one day my children will consume alcohol, so might as well put it in their bottle. Nobody would say that. That doesn't make any sense. But yet when it comes to certain things, certain things in greater culture, or even certain types of people, we have to be so careful about what we allow our children to be exposed to. You don't graft the tree until the tree itself is strong enough in its own identity. Then, if you introduce something new, then ultimately, again, the result could be something beautiful and something even better, something stronger. But if you graft the tree before it's fully matured, you stunt the future growth of the tree. It's such an incredible and important yisod. And what is true for trees, alachas kama v'kama is true for children. And so just to understand, so the idea of an ungrafted carob tree means it's a young tree. And because it's a young tree, therefore Allah L'maiseh it's included in the sale. So too, the Besulas HaShikma means this is a sycamore tree that ultimately, again, has not been pruned. Which is also a beautiful thing, because part of the yisod in parenting is, sometimes you have to let your kids be themselves. Every parent, consciously or subconsciously, has a vision of who they want their child to be. Right? I want my child to be like this, I want my child to be like that. And so sometimes we don't even realize it, but we prune the branches while the tree is still young. So a little bit of pruning may be necessary, but part of the development of the tree is let the branches grow. Let the branches grow. Let a child grow into their own. Sometimes a child becomes what their parent wants them to be, but more often than not, children become who they need to be, not who their parents want them to be. And part of parenting is allowing those branches to grow out. Obviously, if the branch is growing in a totally wrong direction, right? The branch is going into my neighbor's yard, so that's not good. Sometimes you have to prune a little bit here and there. But there's such a powerful yesod to allowing our children to become who they need to become and not prune them to make them into our own image. So just powerful yesodos from parenting and chinuch from the Mishnah and Bava Basra. So in any event, but back to our regularly scheduled program. But the idea over here is the Gemara says that if you have an ungrafted carob tree, so that's a young carob tree, or an unpruned sycamore tree. So these are all young trees. These are included in the sale of the field. So the Gemara says, Afagav dalimi, even though they're robust, right? So even though they're robust and even though they're strong and powerful trees on their own, haloch l'maisa, they are still included in the sale. Avaloma charloas havanim shein l'tzarcha. So we'll say, remember again, Mo is next, but we don't include in the sale. Stones that are not necessary for the field. So if there are stones in the field that are not, so now we understand what necessary is, right? Necessary means they hold down the sheaves of wheat, or they're going to be used for a wall, but apparently if they're not necessary, they're not included. So Gemara says, what's an example of stones that are not necessary? So again, this goes back to this machlokes Rabbi Meir and the Rabbanan. Rabbi Meir, de lo miskan, according to Rabbi Meir, ultimately, again, they have not been designated for use in the field. The Rabbanan de lo machtan, according to the Rabbanan, they have not been placed in the field. Ula, now that's according to the first approach. They are talking about stones that are placed on top of sheaves. But according to Ula, who says that we're talking about stones that are going to be used for a wall, the Rabbi Meir de lo miskan, according to Rabbi Meir, they have not been organized. The Rabbanan de lo sidron, right? According to Rabbanan, they have not been piled one on top of the other. Okay. Similarly, again, halacha l'maisa, if you have reeds in the vineyard that are not going to be used, that have reeds that are not used for the vineyard, they're also not included. According to Rabbi Meir, they haven't been smoothed. According to the Rabbanan, they have not been placed underneath the vines. Incredible. So I'll say similarly again, if you have grain that has been detached. Right? So again, I'm selling Reuven a wheat field. I've harvested wheat in the field. That harvested wheat is not included in the sale of the land. To which the Gemara says, now we'll say, now what's the chiddush in that? The chiddush in that is even though the wheat still needs the field. Now what does that mean, the wheat needs the field if it's been harvested already? So the Rashbam points out, remember again, it's all interesting agricultural knowledge. You don't just harvest wheat and bring it into your house, right? What do? You leave it out in the field to dry out. Right? So therefore, again, even though the wheat has been detached, still the wheat, so to speak, still needs the field. So I might have thought that because it still needs the field, therefore it should be included in the sale. Kamash Malo, no. Once it's harvested and detached, it's not included in the sale. Come on, it's incredible. By the way, it's also like, if you think about this, that grain needs the land even if it's not attached. An incredible metaphor for Am Yisrael and Eretz YIsrael as well. There are Jews who Baruch Hashem grow in the land. Those are the Jews who are zocha now to live in Eretz YIsrael. But even those of us who don't physically live in the land, even if you're detached from the land, you still need the land as well. There's still a concept of needing the land, needing the Aretz, even if you're not physically attached to it. Incredible. Gemara goes weiter. Soon again, if you have a thicket, right? This is like I don't know if thicket is the right word. I just like the word thicket, right? This is like a thicket, right? That was the Ayal Nechaz B'Svach. Article translates as the thicket. Right? So again, if you have a patch, you have a patch of reeds that's a quarter of a kav. Ultimately, again, it is not included in the sale. Even though again it's still relatively small. By the way, this is not just the din in reeds. This is any patch. We're going to see any patch that essentially has its own individual identity. It has its own identity. So we'll say this is actually very important. So let's say, for example, I'm selling Ruvain, a field. But within that field is a patch of whatever, right? It could be a row of herbs or a row of vegetables or something, but something that has its own identity. Own identity by dint of the fact that it has its own name. It's known by something else. It is not included in the sale. So the Gemara says, Amra Papa, v'hu dekarila varda de planya. He gives an example of if let's say again, let's say for example there was a rose bush, and they called the rose bush or the rose patch. This is the rose patch of Shimon. If it has its own name, it has its own identity, even though it's situated in the field, it's not included in the sale. Incredible. Similarly, again, about say if there was a guardhouse that was made with mortar or plaster, it's not included in the sale. And I was saying the chiddush over there is even though this structure is attached to the ground, it's not included in the sale. Why? Because it's made of mortar plaster, therefore what? Therefore, it's chashiv, has its own independent identity, and therefore is not included in the sale. Incredible. Skip the parentheses. By Rabbi Lazar, Melavnos shal psachim mahu. So Rabbi said, this is fascinating. So this is actually Melavnos shal psachim. So if you take a look, the Rashbam says over here as follows: By Rabbi Lazar, Mishum Asnis in the Kamiflagi B'Shomria Ben Asuy Betit Lashena B'Asuy Betit Nokit Hacha Lahach Bayad the Kamiflaga Ben Asuy Ben Good Mocher Sabayis the Chavero Kabay Mocher Bechlal Abayis Melavno Shal Psachim Imlav Hu Tikun Shaos and Sabah Vamazuzos Ulamilamalo Milamata Shalosh Shakir Falayim. Shabbos saying this is actually very interesting. So this is talking about over here. Melavno Shal Psachim essentially is, I'm not going to say it's a doorway. There's a doorway, right? So the doorway has the door post and the lintel. But sometimes people would add in like a little extra, almost like a molding that's there. But the door would rest against the molding. So it's not part of the primary. There's a primary doorway, but then you'd have this additional molding there. Is that included in the sale of a home or not? Very interesting shaila. So malamno shal psachim. So literally, again, these additional molding that the door would rest against, is that included in the sale of the home or not? So mao. So obviously, if the moldings are mamish like attached, right? If they're attached with mortar, then obviously that's part of the structure. Then of course it goes without saying. Kiti ba'ilacha, tinekiti b'sichi mai. What happens most say if the moldings are not attached with mortar, but rather again they're attached by pegs, meaning they're easily detachable. So is that included in the sale of the home or not? Which the Gemara says, teku. Not sure. Similarly again, by Rabbi Zera, melavno shal chalonos. Mao, both say same idea. What if you have some type of framing, some type of molding around windows? So is that included in the sale of the home or not? So so one thing you say, that's clearly just decorative. So because it's decorative and not functional, so you both say it's a little bit different than the moldings by a door. Because the moldings by a door on one hand are decorative, but they're also functional because the door does rest against it. So that's functional and also decorative. But the ones around the windows really is just decorative. So we'll say, so on one hand, and therefore again, maybe since it's only decorative, you could take it with you. O dilma, kevan the mechabri, or maybe since they're attached, ultimately again it's considered to be attached, and therefore Allah it's good in the sale, teku. No, leaves it open. So by Rabbi Yirmiyah, but lavno shall cry me to mouse. What's is very interesting. They used to have these attachments to the legs of a bed. I would say, what does this mean? So remember that their floors were earthenware floors. Beds were made of wood. What happens if you have the legs of the bed sitting on the earthenware floor for a protracted amount of time? The wood will rot. So the Rashbam points out to me what they would do is they would have these little attachments to the bottom of the bed. So essentially they would attach another piece of wood or something else to the bottom of the leg. So that would again, now that piece may rot over time also, but you could always replace that, but the bed itself would remain therefore intact. So let's say I'm buying a bed. Does the purchase of the bed, does it include those little add-ons or not? So we'll say, so ultimately again, halacha l'maisa. So when those bottom piece attachments are actually attached to the bed, then of course they're included in the bed, right? Because again, they're attached. So kiti bailacha heichad lo metaltli. What when they're not actually attached? In other words, the bed sits on them, but they're not actually attached. So what's the halacha in that case? Tush the Gemara says, teku. We're not sure. We're not sure. All right, so the Gemara goes right there. V'lo escharav hamurkav, v'lo sedana shikma. Shabbos says next. Again, what's not included? These are examples of things that are not included. The grafted fig tree, right? Carob tree, sorry. V'lo sedana shikma, or a pruned sycamore tree. So these are considered to be more mature, more significant trees, and therefore they are not included in the sale. So I'll say Amadeus. So I'll say this is fascinating. But not honey. From where do we know this? Let's take a step back for just a second. Right? Before you saw this Mishnah, I would have thought, which trees are included in the sale of a field? Which trees are included? Everything. You buy a field, right? So again, I understand that there's a discussion about, let's say, what we'll call field utensils, right? Which type of field utensils are included? That's Machlokes Rabbi Meir and the Rabbanon, right? But those are what we'll call field accessories. But a field includes the earth and anything mamish like agriculturally attached to the earth. So I would have no havamina that when it comes to trees, some trees are included, some trees aren't included. I would have automatically assumed that the default is all trees are included in the sale of a field. Now the Mishnah tells me that no, certain trees, which essentially are choshev trees. Now again, because of our lack of arbitorial knowledge, so I don't know what's an important tree, what's a lack of. So Bakshan, the Mishnah comes and says, I'll tell you, what's an important tree? A grafted carob tree. That's choshev. Or a pruned sycamore tree. These are more mature trees. Ultimately, again, halacha l'maisa, therefore not included in the sale. So the Gemara says, Mahayimili. Where do you know this from? We know from that some trees aren't included in the sale, some trees aren't included in the sale, or more importantly, what the Gemara is saying is, how do I know that important trees, chashav trees, are not included in the sale of the land? From where do I know this? So Amro says, the that literally again, a grafted carob tree or a pruned sycamore tree are not included in the sale of the field. Where do I know this? Now back to the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi is incredible. So the Amar Kra, the pasuk says, "Vayokom stei Ephron asher machpelah." So both say this is absolutely incredible. Parshas Chayei Avraham Avinu purchases Marasa Machpelah, but he also purchases the surrounding fields of Marasa Machpelah as a burial place for Sarah Imenu. Now listen to the lashon of the pasuk. So the Gemara only quotes the first part of the pasuk. I will say here's the full pasuk. Vayakom stei Ephron asher machpelah asher lifnei mamrei. Literally again, the stei Ephron, the field that Ephron used to own, and he sold to Avraham Avinu. Vayakam. Rashi's Vayakam means it rose in importance because it went by being owned. It went from being owned by Ephron to being owned by Avram. So just by virtue of being owned by Avram, the prominence of the field was elevated. Asher lefnei mamrei. Listen to this. Hasodeh v'hamara asher bo. So there was the field and the cave. That's Marasa Machpelah. That was situated in the field. V'chol ha'etz asher basadeh, and all of the trees that were in the field, asher b'chol gvulo saviv, that were in the borders of that field. Okay, so what did Avraham Avinu own? Avraham Avinu owned the field, the cave, and all of the trees that were in the field, that were in the borders of that field. Okay, so the Gemara says very strange wording, right? Why is it strange wording? So number one, why do you have to mention eitzim? Why do you have to mention trees at all, right? And what does it mean that Avraham owned the trees that were in the field that were demarcated by the boundaries of the field? What does that mean? So here we go. Misha tzarech ligvul saviv. Which trees are included in the sale of property? Only trees, right? Only trees that need to be identified by the boundaries of the field. Hold on. Yatsu elu shein tzrichim ligvul saviv. I will say, but trees that are so chashuv that they don't have to be identified by the boundaries because people know these trees are not included in the sale of property. Okay, so let me explain this once more. The fact that the pasuk says that Avraham Avinu, there are two different types of trees. in the world of trees, right, at least halachically, in the world of trees, there are two different types of trees. Trees that are so important that their location does not have to be identified by the field in which they are situated, because everyone knows these trees, they're chashav trees. They're chashav trees. Versus other trees, which are only known or identified by the field in which they are situated. So trees, so watch this. And therefore, again, the pasuk says over here that what did Avraham Avinu acquire? He acquired the cave, the field, and v'chol ha'et, all the trees that were included in the boundaries of the field. So Avraham Avinu acquired trees that didn't have their own independent identity. So because that, the only way we know about these trees is how, or the identity of these trees is essentially subsumed by the area in which they are situated. What didn't Avraham Avinu acquire? Any trees that might have been so important that they had their own individual identity aside from the field in which they were situated. So from here you see that if a tree is so chashiv that it has its own individual identity, independent of the field in which it is situated, it's not included in the sale of the field. Only trees that are individually unimportant, and therefore the only way they are known is because they sit in a particular field, those are included in the sale of the field. Incredible. So we'll say, so therefore coming full circle, therefore apparently, again for us we know this in the Mishnah, therefore apparently a grafted carob tree, that's very chashiv. A pruned sycamore tree, very chashiv. Those are the kind of trees people know about independent of the field in which they are situated. People know about those kind of trees. So because they have their own individual identity, therefore, they are not included in the sale of the field. Incredible. So the Gemara says, Misha tzarech ligvul yatsu elashem tzarech ligvul. Sabbath. Amram misharshi mikan lemitzara min Torah. So we'll say, what do you see from here? You see from here that ultimately, again, the concept of boundaries is learned out mid-da'oraisa. So this concept of Bava, this happens to be fascinating, that this piece of real estate law, namely that a grafted carob tree or a pruned sycamore tree are not included in the sale of a field, or the concept that trees with their own individual identity are not included in the sale of a field. It is only trees that don't have an independent identity, that are only known because of the field in which they are situated. Those are the trees included in the field, learned out from Avraham Avinu and the purchase of Maras HaMachpelah. Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Okay. So the Gemara goes like there. The Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda, Hayman de Mizbin Ar Lechabre. So let's listen to this interesting idea over here. If a person goes ahead and sells a field to his friend, he should write in the field that you acquire these are all different types of palm trees. Right? All different types of palm trees. So go ahead and halacha l'maisa, you should say that ultimately, again, I'm giving over to you all different types of palm trees. I will say, now afagav dechilo kasev lehachi kani. So I'll say, so now the truth is you don't actually have to write that, right? Because remember again, I will say, when you sell a field, what's included in the sale? What's included in the sale? What's included in the sale? Everything. The only exceptions that we have are these two trees, right? The grafted carob tree and the pruned sycamore tree. Other than that, everything else is included. So the Gemara says, really, you don't actually have to write, I'm giving you this type of palm, that type of palm. You don't have to write that. But you should write it. So the Gemara says, even if you didn't write it, right? Reuben still acquires all the different types of palm trees. It's good. It's good to write it in the shtar. They will say, why is it good to write in the shtar? The Rashbam says over here in the fifth wide line, the Rashbam shufra the shtara, yipoi koach hashtar dafilu I asul lifnei bezdin toed yohiv le shar mufurashim b'shtoch shtar. They will say, so sometimes again, not every bezdin is a competent bezdin. So the issue just is, if for some reason you would end up with a dispute in front of an incompetent beis din, if you have everything explicitly written in a shtar, it just makes life a little bit easier. That's all. So this is interesting. So sometimes, again, there are certain things you don't have to write in a document, but just understand, by writing it in a document, you just ensure that there is no ambiguity or no possibility for error. Fascinating. Interesting idea, I'll say. Just in general, I think this is conventional wisdom in shtar writing, in document writing. So just write it, right? The more explicit you can be, the less you leave to the possibility of misinterpretation. Okay, incredible. Let's go back there. So let's say this is interesting. So let's say I'm selling Reuben a piece of property. and I tell them, I'm selling you land and palm trees. Land and palm trees. So I will say, so now, here's what's interesting. Now this makes it sound like I'm selling him two independent things. I'm selling you ara, land, and dikli, palm trees. Now I will say, now, the minimum amount of palm trees, including the statement of palm trees, is minimum amount 2. So watch this. The Gemara says, chazinon. So again, so now I'm obligated to give Ruvain land, and I'm also obligated to give him 2 palm trees. Now, if I have 2 palm trees, great, give him 2 palm trees. And if I don't have 2 palm trees, then what am I obligated to do? I'm obligated to buy 2 palm trees and give him 2 palm trees. Let's say I have 2 palm trees, but they're encumbered. What should I do? I should redeem them from the encumbrance and give them to Ruvain. Okay. So now this is just getting different verbiage by a sale. Let's say sell Ruvain, I'm selling you ara bidikli. I'm selling you land with palm trees. So the Gemara says chazina. So we'll say what that makes it sound like is I'm selling him a piece of land that has palm trees on it. So if the land has palm trees on it, so I give it to him. And if not, it's a mekach tos. We'll say now mekach tos means a mistaken sale. Now what happens with a mistaken sale? It's voided. In other words, if I tell Ruvain, I'm selling you a land with palm trees, I give him a piece of land and it has no palm trees. We'll say that's the equivalent of telling Ruvain, I'm selling you a Cadillac, and I give him a Toyota. Right? So it's not like, oh, come on, they're both cars. Well, don't get caught up in the details. No, that's not the way it works, right? Lamaisa again, that's called a mekach tos. That's called a mistaken sale. And such a transaction like that is totally void. Ara beit dikli. So ultimately, again, if I say, Ruvain, I'm selling you a land beit dikli. Now we'll say that beit dikli, the Gemara is understanding over here, Rashi says, makom haroi l'dikalim. Now we look at that as a statement saying, I'm selling you land that is capable of growing palm trees. So the Gemara says, arbe dikli, less like dikli, the chazila dikli kamalei. Even if it doesn't have palm trees, it's okay. Because I'm not claiming to sell him land with palm trees. I'm claiming to sell him land that is fit for palm trees. Amar le, lebar midikla planya. So let's say I say to Ruvain, I'm selling you land, but I am carving out with the exception of dikla planya, so a particular palm tree. So chazinan, dikla tavahu sheyurishare. So we'll say, so if this turned out to be a good palm tree, then that what it means is that ultimately, again, I'm withholding that palm tree for myself. So we'll say, here's what's interesting. So essentially, if I say to Ruvain, I'm selling you my land, but I'm withholding so-and-so palm tree. So we'll say, so here's what we do, is we look at that palm tree. If that is a good palm tree, so okay, we say fine, Silber was holding on to that palm tree for himself, he's selling everything else, and everything else is included. If the palm tree was an inferior palm tree, then here's the issue. If I'm withholding the inferior palm tree for myself, then what? Certainly I'm withholding everything else for myself as well. In which case, again, it's possible that I'm withholding other things from that sale as well. So, all right, what we'll do is we'll stop over here for today. We'll pick up in Eretz Hashem with this last. Again, I want to rush on the rest of the cases. So I'll stop with this. Again, just a reminder, tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh, Haba Aleinu L'Tova, so Daf Yomi Eretz Hashem begins at 5:45 a.m. And Mir Hashem will say again, Shkayach everyone, meaningful day.
Mazel Tov. If you just someone who put him in the bill.